Hello everyone, this is a backup screencast of the KV Plus Finance Webex that we're going to be giving tomorrow. I wanted to create a screencast just so we've got something to share after the Webex and in case I have any issues connecting to the live service, because this is still very much development software, where this is for 5.1 and we're just on the verge of releasing 5.0, so this is quite bleeding edge. The reason for getting this in front of you now though is to try and elicit some feedback and see how people feel about the new functionality. Since the last time I showed you finance, major work's been done with the importing and with the calculation of cost per use, so that's where our efforts have been and that's what I'll try and show you today. In order to demonstrate this and to test it, we've created this new fictional university called the University of Dorsetshire with the appropriate hat tips to Radio 4. And we've done this so that we've got an entirely fictional university that we can hang costs off, and there'll be no doubt about whether they were real costs or fictional ones. So if you see it under the University of Dorsetshire, then it's completely fake, and you'll see from my test data that it's all very made up. I'm going to go to the default dashboard there and into subscriptions. I've started to set up our test data, and what I'm going to do is to talk you through the process of setting up cost per use calculations. This is a little bit different to how it would work in practice, because in practice, of course, your subscription is probably going to be generated from the JISC license data, and your usage statistics will have come from JUSP. Whereas, because this isn't a real university, of course, we have to fake both the subscription data and the usage data. But that's a good thing, because it means there can be no confusion about where the data's come from. If I click on this subscription, you'll see the revised subscription page. Across the top line here, we've now got pills which are very specifically related to subscriptions and the subscription use cases. So your current entitlements, the header details, link package, and the second line down has more ancillary things like documents, notes, additional information, edit history, and to-dos. The other thing which you'll immediately notice is the current entitlements pill now dives directly into your holdings, into your issue entitlements. The header information is moved to this details tab. So that's a change we got asked for quite a lot, in terms of people usually just want to go straight to your entitlements and not have to scroll through all this stuff. So that's why we've moved it to the second tab. In order to tie together subscription data and license data and order data, we need to also have some linked identifiers, and the first place that this came from really was, let me just quickly pull up one of my test data files. So this is an example of a tab separated file which follows pretty much the JISC licensing conventions, and you'll see that in this file I have a resource ID of bought test 2, so that's a subscription ID. We've always been able to store identifiers at the level of subscriptions, but it became very apparent when we were doing this work that we were going to need to namespace subscription identifiers, because if you have Oracle Financials, maybe you've got an Oracle Financials reference for your subscription, you're likely to have a JC, JISC Collections reference. So we've added this idea to do namespaced identifiers in the same way that you have namespaced ISSNs and ISBNs and EISSNs. So what I'm going to do first for this new subscription is I'm going to give it a very specific and very fake, that's not right, a very specific and very fake JISC Collections subscription identifier. So this is JC bought test 2. Normally your JISC Collection subscription IDs would be 1, 2, 3, 4 or a number like that. So this is quite unique. I'm going to click on that. Actually, I think I might already have one in here. I do. Oh, there you go. It's left over from previous testing. So what I've done is I've created an empty subscription. I've given it a subscription identifier of bought test 2 in a JISC Collections namespace. Next thing I need to do is to link package. I need some content so that I can track some usage against this, so I'm going to go into link package. And I've been working with annual reviews, see what we've got, and I think we'll go for 22 titles in Biomedical Life Sciences collection. And what I'm going to do is to link that with entitlements. Okay, so back to my subscription front page. Here are my entitlements. This is good stuff. Next thing then, I've got this file which contains 2 invoices for this subscription. So if you remember when we set the subscription up, I set it up over 2 years. So maybe the use case here is we get invoiced yearly, it's a 2-year deal, and I've got both years' invoices in this file. Under the institutions menu, in 5.1, not in 5.0, we have this new upload cost items. So I'm going to click on that. This screen shows you all the columns that we currently understand when we're importing tab-separated finance data. And almost all of them are optional. Obviously, the more you fill out, the more we'll be able to link together. What we absolutely do need is institution ID. And currently, that's the just collections institution ID, but again, we can namespace that. Based on feedback, if we can stick with just collections institution IDs, that would be extremely easy for us to deal with. But the purpose of this screen is to just remind you of how you can set up those tab separated files in part or in whole. If you can take this as a template and just use it and use these columns, then this is a pretty ideal setup for us, really. If I scroll down to the bottom, I actually get the file upload form, so I can choose a file, and I'm going to choose this BORT test 2 that I showed you before. There's a dry run box, which is checked currently. I'm going to click upload, and this gives us back a screen which again is very verbose at the moment, but this is to help us as we develop the software. And what's happening is we've got each line from the file, so these are the lines from the file across here. So they're all the values that have come from the file. And then what we've got here are messages about how we've managed to process that line, because we need to do things like create invoices and create orders and link data together. So if any of those things had failed, then this would all be lit up in red saying error row, and we wouldn't be allowed to import it. But actually, as it is, we've got this row OK message, and then the system's told us what we do. So by the time we get to production, I imagine we'll probably get rid of all of this. But again, it's useful for tracking down where problems are, because you can imagine it's important if the subscription ID is present that it matches a subscription. So we need a way to tell you that we're rejecting a row, for example, because we don't recognize the subscription ID. So that's how this works. At the moment, this is giving positive messages as well as negative messages. But that's the idea, is that this will basically give you hints as to why we can't load your data. And when we can load your data, give you a big green tick. So those 2 rows seem to be okay. That's fine. You can see if we actually look here, it tells us that we've managed to locate a subscription for the subscription ID and all the other good stuff going on. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to uncheck the dry run box and click upload. Now I go back to my University of Dorsetshire dashboard, back to subscriptions, finance test. And if I go back to the details tab, you can see that now I've got these 6 cost items, and these 6 cost items represent the raw cost of the subscription, the VAT, and a transaction charge. So these are basically 3 cost elements for each of those invoices. And we can add columns here to explain what's going on a little bit more. That's kind of your choice. And so you should have already seen something like that. And indeed, if we go to the institutions, University of Dorsetshire Finance tab, that's where these are. And you get a little bit more of a feel for the finance data here. You can see that we're linked to the subscriptions, and we've got the descriptions from the import file. So I'll hop back to the subscription. Ultimately, this was all about cost per use, of course. So what I'm going to do, because this is University of Dorsetshire that doesn't have real usage, I'm going to look at the annual review of analytical chemistry. And if you just remember, our subscription ran essentially over 2 years, from the 1st of 2014 to the end of 2015. Pardon me. Again, fictional, made up to try and exercise bits of the system, so don't read too much into my very suspect test data. What I'm going to do is institutions, University of Dorsetshire. This option, institutional titles, used to be only for editing course status, and you'll see this in 5.0. I'm going to list all titles. Now, here I've got annual reviews of analytical chemistry, and this is where we would set core status dates, which relate to your JUSP core title status. If I click on the title though, what I get to is a page where I can attach institutional data about that title. And this is obviously the place where things like usage data hang off. And what this screen is doing down here is allowing me essentially to manually add usage data, which is what I need in order to test this JUSP use case. So what I'm going to do is go for 01/01/2014, and I'm going to say that there were 120 usage events for this item on just JR1, so we could add all the different types there, and click add usage. That's good. And what I'll do is I'll create a second one for the 2nd of 2014, and we'll say that was 110. Add usage, good. And 2015, so 01/01/2015, usage 350. Add usage. So what I've done there is to create three. Essentially, this data would normally come from JUSP. You wouldn't enter this by hand, but I've manually done that in order to test what we're doing. So we've got some usage now for this subscription. Well, no, that's not true. We've got some usage against the titles which are in this subscription to be correct. So University of Dorsetshire. Back to subscriptions. Nothing particularly changed on the subscription screen. We've still got our finance data, but the other new thing we've got now is cost per use. So we'll go to the cost per use tab, and what we've got, I'll take a moment to try and explain this. Over the course of this subscription, there have been 2 invoices attached to this subscription, and you can see 2015 01/01 to 2015 12/31, so the end of 2015, and 2014, this second line. These are listed most recent first downwards, and if a subscription had run for 5 years and had 5 invoices, they'd be listed, or if they were invoiced 6 monthly, then again they would just be listed here. And the criteria is, if it's an invoice attached to the subscription and it covers the date range, then it's going to get shown here. What we get then on the next line down is a brief summary. So this says total usage for the invoice period is 350, and that gives an overall cost per use of £76.52, which obviously is extremely expensive, but that's an example of the test data. What I'm also doing here is then apportioning that cost over the reporting periods, the JUSP reporting periods. We only added one value for 2015, so obviously that accounts for the entire year's usage. But we added 2 values in 2014, so in January and February, and what you can see is really interested in feedback on this. I don't know if this is telling you anything that you really need to know, or whether or not actually seeing these numbers, because there was less usage in 2014, and even though the cost was a little bit less, obviously the cost per use is higher because it was used less. So what I might do is go back to institutions, institutional type. Just open this in a new tab so that I don't have to flick around too much. Reviews of analytical chemistry, and what I'll do then is I'll create a second 2015, so 01/02/2015, and in order to try and show more realistic numbers, I'm going to put in resource usage of 2,500. I'm going to add that usage record, go back to my cost per use page, refresh it, and now you can see my apportionment for this period has now got this second line in, and this is telling me that overall cost per use £6.96, so we're starting to be a little bit more sensible in 2015. Let's see if I can make 2012 a little bit more sensible, so let's go for 01/03/2015, and let's go for 6,700. Quick reload. Okay, so where did my, oh, sorry, did I put that in 2015? I did, yes, sorry. So our cost per use is coming down. It's 2014. I should have added that too. So what we'll do is we'll add some delete buttons here. You wouldn't normally be entering this data by hand. So 01, 03, 2014 this time. 8,900. Reload. That's better. Okay, so our cost per use now is down to £2.70, which is a little bit more realistic. The other thing I'll do is, you've only seen me so far put in 1 entry per month, and that isn't quite how things work. So what I'll do is I'll put in something on the 2nd of the 1st, 2015 for, let's make it 20,000, just so that you can really see the effect. So you can see in our first period for 2015 we had usage of 350. If I refresh this now, you can see that in our first period our usage has gone up to 20,350. So this shows the rolling up of all usage statistics in this particular period into this, and you can see that for this invoice for this year of the subscription, our cost per use now apparently is 88 pence. I don't have any feel for how realistic any of these numbers are, but that's basically what we're doing there. So we've concentrated primarily on cost per use at the subscription level, not seeing any title level cost data yet. Once we get some examples of that, we'll start having a go at title level cost per use. The other thing which I was considering was within this, breaking down the titles that had been used. The difficulty, of course, is that means that if one title gets used once, it's going to attract attention, whereas all those titles which aren't getting used are not getting reported on because there's no usage. But that almost means that their cost per use is infinitely high, because they're not being used at all, and you're paying for something. So really, this is a good time to critically think about what cost per use actually means. And having seen this, you might say there are way too many things hiding in the woodwork here for us, or maybe we think this is okay. So I'd be very pleased to get any feedback. I think the other thing which I was supposed to show you is exporting this data. So we don't have that yet, but what the idea is that we'll have an export to CSV button in the top corner like we do on the subscription page and the license page that will let you grab this data. If it turns out to be more appropriate to have basically to rotate the axes, so obviously on a web page it's nice to go vertically down for the months of the year, but actually when you take it to Excel or something, you might rather have the date periods in columns going along. So I'd really welcome some feedback on whether this is useful, the information is useful, the level of granularity is right or wrong, and how you think you would like to be able to export this so that you can work with it. And if you do want title level analytics, but bear in mind that given some of the packages are thousands of titles, that could be that could be quite challenging to display. I think that's all I need to show you for now. Hopefully in the call we'll have this will prompt some good discussion, and we can go through it. Thank you for sticking with me for this long.